Okay, so I have to brag a little bit here. I actually got to play this mystery with someone who grew up in Sweden. So I made her pronounce all the names, and it was super cool for her to add a little bit more context to the setting and pronounce things correctly, which I definitely won't be doing justice here in this video. This mystery comes in this book called A Wicked Secret and Other Mysteries for the Vaesen core rules. This is a one-shot mystery that takes 1 to 2 sessions. I did it in 4 hours, but depending on the choices your players make, it could take up to 5 or 6. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about how to break up this mystery. This mystery mostly takes place in a small village in the north of Sweden called Farnsta in the 19th century. August von Meyer seeks your urgent assistance. He is a sawmill owner who is looking to expand. So he sent his 2 employees to Farnsta, and one of them did not come back, and the other one came back screaming and out of his mind on horseback. August rightfully expects some foul play and wants to get to the bottom of this. In particular, he's still interested in expanding to the village that he sent his employees to, so he wants to understand what's really happening, and the employee that came back keeps muttering about some sort of beast. Spoilers will be happening moving forward. Okay, what's the real deal here? There's a cult in this village to the north called the Free Ones, and they complete at least 1 human sacrifice each generation to ensure the fertility of the land in the Farnsta village. But there is a divide in this cult. There is a group who wants to leave the old ways and stop sacrificing humans, and feels like if they sell the land that they can leave this old tradition behind and no longer have to be murdering humans. But the other part of the cult wants to continue this tradition because it's worked so far, so why stop now? The people that want to stay are led by Marta Kolstrom, and Marta's actually going to house the PCs while they're in the village. So nice of her. Marta and Dorothy have a pretty large rivalry to begin with because Marta owns the sawmill and Dorothy owns the land, but they always butt heads and often don't get along. What happened when the 2 employees visited Farnsta is Marta felt like the land was in danger and took some drastic action. There is a church ground that's actually protecting the area around the church, but Marta has some control over this creature, and she told it to murder one of the employees. So now I'm going to go through the different locations that your PCs are likely to visit. The first is actually meeting with August and learning all the information and details about what he knows. So this part of the mystery is going to be pretty straightforward, but there's also a chance that the PCs are going to meet the employee that came back and is still a little crazed. Linskold is the one that actually escaped, and he is currently locked in a room at the sawmill because August doesn't want him hurting himself or other people. I found Linskold to be very fun to play, and I would recommend as a game master you move around a bit, whether that's just in your chair, slumping over, changing your posture, moving, trying to stay awake, or if it's standing up, being a little bit crazed, falling down, hunkering in your seat. Whatever it can display a little bit of uncomfortableness, and scratching at arms can be helpful as well to really display that this man has been through something very traumatic. Keep in mind that the mention of the other employees' names, either Godfred or Hammerstrom, is going to start uncontrollable crying and is going to require a roll in manipulation or inspiration to try and calm him down. If they do manage to calm him down, definitely reward your players for that and give some additional information, either specifically leaning into the eyes of the beast, that they're red, very big beast, or giving information about the scratches on his arm, that the scratches aren't from the beast, but just rather the branches as he was trying to run away. So it's likely that your players aren't going to get a ton of information from him, but it certainly sets the mood and gets them started on the path to Farnsta. Then they arrive in Farnsta, the main village this takes place, and Marta is of course the first one to greet them. She is going to welcome them into her home, but most importantly is going to share a tour of the village. The village is quite small, so it doesn't take too long, but I love this part of the mystery to be able to give your players a key understanding of how small the village is, the key locations that are going to be helpful for them throughout the mystery, and it overall just helped display the setting and gives more to do as Marta is answering their questions. Info-wise, the important things to get across here is she does have a rivalry with Skite, and the lie that she is thinking about selling. She's definitely not, but she's going to leave the players on the hook and not give away all her cards right away. And speaking of, don't give away the full information about the Church Grim just yet, because there's going to be plenty of time for them to learn about this, so slowly build the tension around what this Vaesen actually is. One of my challenges with this mystery is my players progressed pretty quickly, and they ended up going to the cave entrance without a ton of clues, and it also didn't give me a lot of time to ring the church bells and build the tension with the Church Grim to actually wait a full day before murdering someone. You may find yourself in a position where the ringing of the bells actually indicates something bad happening right then as opposed to a day later. So keep that in mind as an option and a warning sign that you can use if things are progressing a little bit quicker than expected. Now, if Marta did a good job of influencing the players that the church had something to do with Hammerstrom's potential problems, then they might go to the church first, so just be prepared to that. But I'm going to go in order of what the book has for the locations. So the first is the village hall, and this is a great time to tell all the legends and increase the spook and delve into small village life, i.e. everyone knows everyone. This is also an awesome chance to play up the rivalry between Marta and Skite a little bit more. I did also add an NPC here in the village hall because I felt like my players weren't really motivated to go through Marta's things or investigate thoroughly inside the church, and so they weren't getting some of those clues and pieces to put together that this was a church grim. So having this occultist that really focused on this was a good chance for them to go to her library and do some research and find some of those handouts that led them on this path. And just a funny side note about this particular interaction, one of my PCs was a magician, and he was actually quite famous. And this NPC recognized the magician, and it was really a fun interaction, some sweet back and forth, and some flirting. And it ended up that the magician saves this NPC in the end, and they leave town. And so it was just a very sweet ending, and something that I wasn't expecting for a random NPC that I threw in. The next location is the church. Now, this is a place that they're likely going to come back to several times. Playing the priest was a ton of fun because he's pretty neutral territory. He doesn't actually know what's going on despite Marta trying to pin things on him. And so it was a fun interaction to be very honest with the PCs. Then if PCs find the incriminating note on the body, they start to suspect the priest more and think that he's lying. So there's some different layers and dynamics going on with that relationship that I really enjoyed playing. It's likely at some point the priest is going to mention or get asked about the Church Grim, and he describes it as a guardian. I love that Vaesen aren't inherently evil or good. They're described in the book as neutral, but some people take them as being evil or good. And in this case, it feels like the priest really embraces the guardian and knows of its existence and is cool with it. As they leave the church, they're likely going to run into Wilhelmina, who is Skite's daughter, and she wants to leave the village because there's just so much more out there. Why stay in this tiny little village? Wilhelmina was also a great character to play and will encourage the PCs to come over for tea and want to learn all about their travels. Don't forget to show crows leaving the forest, and this should be a direct clue to the players to go investigate that area, and they will find Hammerstrom's body. At some point, they're likely going to end up talking to Dorothy Skite, who is the landowner. She is so ready to sell. She wants to get out of this town and not have to deal with that cult ritual any longer. One of the important clues to give your PCs here is about the iron deposit underneath of the church, and that she's the one that ends up telling the employees about this. Next, we have the sawmill. My players didn't end up going here, and there's not a ton of clues, so it's likely that it's not too relevant, and I won't spend a ton of time on this. And this will lead to a final escalation, which will be triggered when your players get close to finding the bones of the Church Grim. How it worked out at my table is they were walking down the street, and they heard first the church bells go off and then some screams at the Skite house. Of course, they went to check it out, and they were just in time to see Dorothy be murdered. Now, one of them had quick thinking and saved the daughter and took her to Marta's house, and then went back to try and help the Skite residents. However, taking them to Marta's house wasn't the best move, and they didn't really know that Marta was involved in all the bad stuff at this point, so Marta ends up kidnapping Wilhelmina for sacrifice. Eventually this will lead to the tunnels, and if your players are not quite getting there, you can always have a mob try and attack them or distract them and lead them to the tunnels. The final confrontation of the mystery occurs in the ritual chamber beneath the church, where Marta plans to sacrifice Wilhelmina to ensure the village's prosperity and eliminate her rivals. The player characters can discover the location by following clues or observing the cult members. This ritual can happen in a few different ways, including some chaos happening from the rebels that don't want to do this sacrifice anymore, but my players actually all successfully rolled stealth, which is like very rare, and I wanted to reward them for being successful at that and let them kind of take charge of what happened at the ritual. So they were planning to sacrifice Wilhelmina, and the magician again comes in to save the day and throws some smoke bombs for distraction. There's a lot of chaos and things start happening. They're able to grab Wilhelmina and escape. What was interesting is my players had a real dilemma whether they wanted to take care of the church grim or not. They knew that the grim was protecting the church and the village, and they didn't inherently see it as a bad thing. So they ended up just escaping town and letting Marta continue doing her thing. Just envisioning my PCs fleeing town was an interesting ending that I wasn't expecting. So my overall thoughts, I absolutely adored the NPCs in this mystery, and they were so fun to play. So take a little bit of time thinking about how you'd like to portray them at the table. I love that this took place in a small village. It was very confined and it felt very old world Sweden. It was great to immerse my players into this village. I loved all the relationships in the village. There was a lot of different dynamics between characters, backstabbing, rivalries, pinning things on the priest that made for this scenario being really interesting. Players had to kind of focus their energy and choose who they were going to save, and I felt like this added a ton of agency in their choices, where they went, and what they decided to do in the end with the church grim. I really enjoyed that this mystery could go a lot of different ways, and overall the PCs were able to make this story their own. I highly recommend that you check out this mystery, and it will be linked in the description below if you're interested. I do have a Patreon if you'd like to support me and help me get out content a little bit faster, and let me know in the comments if you want to hear more videos about Vaesen. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!